Let's not sugarcoat it. Watching the price of Stellar Lumens, XLM, over the past few months has been an exercise in frustration. While meme coins are pulling off insane 10x pumps on nothing more than community hype and influencer tweets, and Ethereum is climbing off the back of ETF headlines and institutional speculation, XLM just doesn't move, consolidates, dips, it recovers a little, and then it goes eerily silent again. No fireworks, no drama, just stillness. If you're holding XLM, you've definitely felt it. That creeping question in the back of your mind, why isn't it moving? You start to doubt. You scroll through your portfolio and ask, am I holding the right coin? Is this thing even alive? You're not alone. That same question echoes across Reddit threads, Telegram groups, YouTube comment sections, and X, formerly Twitter posts. Everyone's got a theory. Some say the Stellar Foundation is suppressing the price. Others argue that investors just don't care about XLM anymore. Then there's the ever-popular narrative that XLM simply lacks marketing and hype, and that's why it's underperforming. But here's the problem with all those takes. They're shallow. They ignore the data, the fundamentals, the partnerships, and most importantly, the macro structure that's being assembled underneath Stellar's ecosystem like a digital financial superhighway. Let's get this straight. Price is not a crystal ball. It's not forward-looking. In fact, price is a lagging indicator. It doesn't tell you what's about to happen. It tells you what's already been accepted by the market. And the market, especially retail, is always late to utility tokens. Always. You don't see price movement before utility. You see it after utility forces the market to reprice the asset. That's the reality most people miss. Hype drives meme coins. Headlines move layer ones. But tokens like XLM, they move when the fundamentals become too loud to ignore. And right now, Stellar is building in silence. While other blockchains throw millions at celebrity endorsements and flashy marketing campaigns, Stellar is doing something radically different. It's integrating directly into the global financial rails, quietly, methodically, and deliberately. It's partnering with humanitarian giants like the UNHCR to deliver digital aid. It's enabling cash-to-crypto ramps through MoneyGram across 180-plus countries. It's laying the groundwork for compliant, cross-border payments between CBDCs and stablecoins. And all of this is being done without fanfare. You see, Stellar isn't trying to win a popularity contest. It's playing a far more dangerous, far more powerful game. It's trying to become invisible infrastructure. That's right, Stellar doesn't want to be flashy. It wants to be embedded. It wants to be default. The same way you don't think about how TCP, IP, or Swift works when you send a bank transfer or an email, Stellar wants to be the protocol quietly moving your money in the background. That's how trillion-dollar infrastructure works. It's not loud. It's omnipresent. Now let's talk about why that matters for XLM holders. Because all of this, every single integration, every payout through Stellar wallets, every cash-in/cash-out transaction via MoneyGram, every Soroban smart contract being developed behind the scenes, it all relies on XLM. It's the grease in the machine, the toll on the highway, the settlement asset. And as that machine starts revving up, as those rails get used at scale, the demand for XLM becomes inevitable. But here's the catch. That demand doesn't hit overnight. It doesn't create a sudden pump. It starts like a whisper, quiet corridors going live, new wallets being funded, new developer grants being issued, liquidity slowly increasing. And then one day something tips. One of those corridors hits volume. A major remittance provider switches on Stellar as their default rails. A government starts issuing stablecoin on Soroban. The switch flips. And the price? It doesn't just go up. It reprices. That's what's coming. Not a pump. A repricing event based on systemic integration and unrelenting utility. So if you're staring at the price chart and wondering why XLM is going sideways while everything else is screaming higher, zoom out. You're not watching a failure. You're watching a setup. This isn't dead weight. It's coiled potential. It's strategic compression before a macro breakout. The irony? By the time the average investor realizes what's happening, the move will already be underway. And the opportunity they dismissed as boring will be the one that changes portfolios forever. So if you're here for hype, for short-term dopamine hits, or for the next memecoin lottery ticket, XLM will disappoint you. But if you're here for infrastructure, for long-term real-world impact, and for being early to the next great financial rail, you're exactly where you need to be. Before we dive deeper into how the rest of the system is evolving, smart contracts, institutional onboarding, CBDC rail development, and more, don't forget to subscribe to Be Crypto Smart. If you're here to see through the noise and understand the tokens that will matter 5 years from now, not 5 minutes from now, this channel was made for you. Let's break down the real reason XLM isn't moving. Because it's not what the crowd thinks, and that misunderstanding might be your biggest edge. Let's get one thing straight from the jump. Stellar was never designed for hype cycles. It was never meant to moon on rumors, soar on social media speculation, or ride the wave of celebrity endorsements. And that's not a design flaw, it's a feature. A very deliberate one. You see, XLM isn't here to play the same game as the rest of the market. It's not a casino token. It's not a memecoin riding a wave of animal mascots and TikTok pump videos. It doesn't promise overnight riches or vague roadmaps to a future ecosystem. It doesn't dangle yield farms or gambling protocols that blow up in a month. That's not what Stellar is about. XLM is a financial infrastructure token. And infrastructure doesn't care about headlines, it cares about function. Let that sink in. XLM's core purpose isn't to entertain. It's not to dazzle with volatility. It's to connect money. To act as the invisible force powering the transfer of assets between banks, fintechs, aid agencies, governments, and people who don't even know they're using crypto. It's the grease that moves the global financial engine when it's running on Stellar rails. That means XLM behaves more like a bridge, a toll booth, or a settlement layer. It gets used when transactions are made, when fiat is on-ramped, when stablecoins are sent cross-border, when remittances flow, and when institutions settle obligations between digital assets and real-world currencies. It doesn't spike on sentiment, it accrues value through utility. And that's where most people miss the point entirely. Let's compare it with Ethereum. ETH can explode on the back of speculative DeFi narratives, NFT mania, or Layer 2 hype. That volatility, while exciting, is often tied to short-term bubbles. In fact, much of the ETH movement over the past few years came from retail speculation, gas fees, and boom-and-bust cycles driven by degens chasing unsustainable yields. XLM, by contrast, is focused on the real world. It's built to solve real problems. It's optimized for speed, compliance, fiat integration, and cost efficiency. It's not trying to create the next meme culture. It's trying to replace parts of the banking system. That's why Stellar's ecosystem developments don't generate headlines like XLM up 400% overnight. They generate infrastructure. For example, when MoneyGram turns on 180+ cash-to-crypto on-ramps using the Stellar network, that's massive. That's global. But the market yawns because it's not packaged as a hype moment. It's not sexy. It's not speculative. It's functional. And function takes time to reprice into a market that's addicted to fast dopamine. Same goes for Soroban, Stellar's smart contract platform. Developers are quietly building enterprise-grade DeFi protocols, tokenization rails, and on-chain compliance tools. But these aren't play-to-earn games or meme vaults. They're tools for institutions. And institutions don't tweet rocket emojis. Behind the scenes, Stellar is onboarding fintech partners, stablecoin issuers, and humanitarian corridors. These aren't pie-in-the-sky partnerships. These are real integrations, and they all require XLM to function. Think of it this way. Every time a dollar moves from cash to a digital stablecoin on Stellar, XLM plays a role. Every time a UN agency sends funds to a refugee wallet in Argentina or Kenya or Ukraine using Stellar rails, XLM is in the middle. It's not speculative hype. It's invisible settlement. And that invisibility is by design. But here's where it gets interesting. Because over time, that invisible demand starts to add up. Like pressure building behind a dam. The market ignores it because it's not flashy, but that utility is accumulating. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. And one day, the system hits escape velocity. That's when the network effect kicks in. That's when the financial corridors hit critical volume. That's when central banks start experimenting with CBDCs on Stellar. That's when the world starts moving money on rails powered by XLM, without even knowing it. At that point, the repricing begins. And it's not based on hype, it's based on structural demand. See, when a meme token pumps, it's almost always followed by a dump. That's not a bug of hype cycles, it's the consequence. But when a utility token like XLM reprices, it does so because the network is now indispensable. The token becomes a requirement, a toll you have to pay. That demand doesn't disappear, it compounds. Let's use a metaphor. Memecoins are firecrackers. Loud, explosive, attention-grabbing, but they burn out fast. XLM? It's more like a steel pipeline buried underground. Quiet, industrial, almost invisible. But when the oil starts flowing, that pipeline becomes the most valuable thing no one saw coming. And here's the irony, because the market is so addicted to hype, it overlooks the very tokens that are setting the foundation for the next generation of finance. People skip over XLM because it's boring, because it doesn't move like a memecoin, because it's not trending on X every 48 hours. But that's the edge. That's the alpha. Because when the liquidity dynamics finally flip, when the corridors flood with volume, when institutions ramp usage, when Soroban apps start deploying real yield products, and when compliance-first DeFi goes live at scale, there won't be enough XLM available at today's prices. The revaluation will be sudden. Not because it pumped, but because the market will finally understand what it missed. And by then, the smart money will already be sitting pretty. So, if you're wondering why XLM isn't doing a 10x overnight, understand this. It's not supposed to. It's not trying to be your next gambling ticket. It's trying to be your future financial infrastructure. And when that clicks, the charts will look like a different asset entirely. Let's keep going, because the next section gets even more important. We're diving into institutional involvement, and how some of the world's biggest players are already preparing to flip the switch on Stellar without saying a word publicly. But before we go deeper, remember, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart if you haven't already. If you're tired of chasing pumps and want to understand how real wealth is built in crypto, this is where you separate noise from signal. If you want to understand where XLM is really headed, why it's not moving yet, but could reprice massively when the right conditions hit, you need to dig into one of the most overlooked developments in the entire crypto space. Soroban. Because here's the truth no one's talking about. Soroban is a quiet revolution. And it changes the entire narrative for XLM. Most people still associate Stellar with cross-border payments and remittances. And yes, that's a massive use case. But what they've missed is that Stellar is no longer just a payment rail. It's becoming a fully programmable financial engine. And that transformation is being powered by Soroban. So what is Soroban? It's not some Ethereum clone or rushed layer 1 fork. It's Stellar's purpose-built smart contract platform, designed from the ground up with a very specific mission: to bring speed, efficiency, low fees, and most importantly, regulatory-ready compliance to smart contract development. That's a big deal, because most blockchains today are either bloated, expensive, or broken. Gas fees spike. Transactions stall. Compliance is an afterthought. Security holes get exploited. And users get wrecked. Stellar looked at all of that chaos and decided to do something radically different. Build a smart contract engine that isn't just powerful but predictable. One that's optimized for enterprise-grade financial logic, not gambling games or pump-and-dump NFTs. With Soroban, developers can finally build directly on Stellar. That opens the door to real decentralized finance. Think lending protocols, tokenized bonds, automated market makers, asset issuance, liquidity hubs, payment streaming, and more. This is not just about DeFi as we know it. This is about compliance-first decentralized infrastructure, the kind that institutions can actually use, not just speculate on. And here's the kicker. XLM just got a second job. Until now, XLM functioned primarily as a bridge asset, used to settle value across the Stellar network, facilitate payments, and anchor fiat ramps. But with Soroban Live, that changes. Now, XLM also becomes the native fuel for smart contract execution. Just like ETH powers Ethereum gas fees, XLM powers the compute layer of Soroban. Every smart contract deployed, every on-chain transaction processed, every automated interaction requires XLM. So let's break that down. More apps being built on Soroban equals more XLM required. More users interacting with contracts equals more XLM burned or circulated. More institutions onboarding equals more locked liquidity, less supply. And over time, more demand pressure on a token that's already tightly distributed. This is the silent engine behind the next phase of XLM's price dynamics. And barely anyone is paying attention to it. Now let's get brutally honest for a moment. Because here's what the market won't tell you. Smart contract adoption is slow. It doesn't go viral overnight. It requires builders. Real builders. Teams that understand security, regulatory frameworks, financial logic, and user experience. Takes time to code, time to audit, time to test, time to onboard users. And that's exactly what's happening right now behind the scenes on Stellar. Where Ethereum fights with regulators and Bitcoin battles for ETF relevance, Stellar is already working with major money transmitters, NGOs, and financial intermediaries to deliver actual financial utility in dozens of nations. That's institutional traction. But it's not loud traction, and that's by design. Because here's the thing about institutions. They don't announce before they act. They don't FOMO in. They don't ape. They don't trade on memes. They integrate. They test. They audit. They accumulate. Quietly. They prepare for systemic onboarding by setting up compliance infrastructure, regulatory green lights, back-end tools, and risk frameworks. And once all that is in place, they flip the switch. But by the time retail finds out, the liquidity stress test has already begun. And the token reprices, fast. That's what's setting up for XLM right now. Here's the kicker. Stellar has no inflation. There's no ongoing token issuance. No yearly dilution. No hidden minting. The XLM supply is fixed. And that means one thing. When institutional demand ramps up, the only place to source liquidity is the open market. And when enough of that demand hits at once, whether it's from CBDC projects, humanitarian aid, fiat off-ramps, or enterprise payment corridors, the price doesn't move gradually. It jumps. Because there's no buffer. No faucet to ease the pressure. Just a finite supply of XLM, competing for expanding demand across hundreds of integrations. That's how repricing events happen. Not from hype. Not from influencers, not from trading bots, but from underlying economic pressure when utility becomes so embedded, so demanded, and so unignorable that the token must reprice to fulfill its role. And here's the cold reality. The price stagnation you see now is a mirage. It's the market breathing before the utility tsunami hits. It's institutions moving without announcing. It's NGOs deploying rails at scale without tweeting. It's liquidity corridors being carved across Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, without retail even noticing. By the time the chart moves, it won't be for traders. It'll be for liquidity providers, for real-world settlement, for protocol-level necessity. And if you're not positioned before that inflection point, you'll be the one chasing green candles, not the one riding the wave. So let's recap. Stellar is onboarding real institutions quietly. These integrations aren't future promises. They're live today. Demand is building at the infrastructure layer, not the hype layer. XLM supply is fixed with no inflation safety valve. And the price? It won't move until it has to. This isn't the story of a token that's failed to pump. This is the story of a network primed for repricing, just waiting on the moment liquidity stress becomes unavoidable. And when that moment comes, the people who stayed focused through the noise, the ones who understood the signal, will already be holding the assets everyone else is scrambling to buy. So stay tuned, because in the final section we're tying everything together. Macro timing, accumulation strategies, and the exact signs that smart money is watching before XLM's next move. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for Be Crypto Smart, where we decode the real crypto story before it hits the headlines. Let's finish strong. Let's talk numbers. XLM has a fixed supply. The Stellar Foundation burned 55 billion tokens back in 2019, cutting the total supply nearly in half. That means there is no ongoing inflation. Every XLM that will ever exist is already out there. This creates a powerful dynamic. Fixed supply plus growing utility equals upward pressure. But in the short term, it also means limited liquidity. Much of the XLM supply is held by long-term wallets, staking services, or custodians preparing for institutional demand. Only a fraction is actively traded. This low liquidity environment suppresses price movement during quiet phases. But it also amplifies movement once volume returns. If just a handful of institutional corridors come online in full capacity, whether via MoneyGram, Soroban dApps, or CBDC integration, the demand shock could move the market dramatically. In addition, the Stellar Development Foundation (SDF) has been strategic. Rather than pumping the market, they've focused on grants, ecosystem support, and infrastructure. This creates organic adoption rather than artificial price spikes. It's chess, not checkers. The current price action is not a sign of weakness. It's a strategic lull. It's a compression phase. And when that coil snaps, it'll be because the market is forced to reprice XLM based on actual usage and scarcity, not speculation. Conclusion. This is bigger than a pump. It's a repricing event waiting to happen. XLM's price isn't moving because the people building with it don't care about short-term speculation. They're building infrastructure that moves billions, even trillions, in real value. And once that system is fully operational, the price of XLM will have to catch up. Not because of hype, but because of utility. Every MoneyGram corridor, every smart contract on Soroban, every fiat-to-crypto conversion in a developing country, every CBDC or stablecoin issued on Stellar, these all create compounding demand for XLM. The repricing won't be a pump. It'll be a recalibration. So if you're watching the charts and wondering why XLM hasn't taken off yet, zoom out. Understand the structure. Study the fundamentals. Because when the switch flips, it won't be gradual. It'll be explosive. If you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button and subscribe to Be Crypto Smart. This channel is where utility meets clarity and where early conviction gets rewarded. Because when the market wakes up to what XLM is powering under the hood, it won't be cheap anymore. Not financial advice, but the smart money already knows.